Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Freelance Friday podcast. And podcasts are what I want to talk about today, actually. I've done a ton of content across my YouTube channel and this podcast about how to start a podcast, but I haven't really done much on how to actually grow it and what I did to grow this one, as well as my second podcast, which is called Content Creator Confessions. I'm kind of in the thick of that. I'm about 10 episodes into that one. So this all feels very relevant and kind of like a checklist, going back to what I did for this one. So I want to talk about how to grow a podcast in today's episode. I know podcasting is something that's on a lot of people's minds lately. I feel like it's a very trending topic with all that's going on in the world of social media. I have found having a podcast to be so incredibly valuable. It's made me lots of money over the years through brand partnerships, but also through just selling and promoting my own stuff. It's gotten me booked on stages, huge stages like Social Media Marketing World and Digital Summit and, Honeybook Partner Summit and all kinds of things like that. So I'm really excited to talk about podcasts with you today. Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at Metricool. As you can probably expect, one of the ways that I grew my podcast was through social media. Actually, a huge way that I grew my podcast and continue to grow my podcast is through social media. And Metricool is my social media scheduling analytics tool of choice. It is amazing. You can always use my code Latasha at the link in the show notes to get 30 days free on any of their premium plans. But today, they actually are back with a new report, and they do such an amazing job with these studies, these reports. They dig so deep into what actually works on social media right now across the different platforms. So much good data. So that is going to be linked for you down below. Their reports are packed with valuable insights and tangible strategies to enhance your platform approaches. They just launched their largest study yet, and after analyzing over 21 million posts from more than 1 million accounts across 8 social media channels. With an ever-changing social media landscape, understanding which formats and platforms achieve the best results and translate to positive growth is so essential. This report includes a detailed breakdown of how each channel has evolved over 2020 to drive strategies and trends in 2025. So download the free report in the show notes to compare against your results and put the data into action for the new year. Okay, so let's get into it. I started this podcast, the Freelance Friday podcast, in January 2018, which feels like forever ago. And I want to say this first and foremost. You know what? I'm going to get cozy. I'm gonna get cozy because this is going to be a real talk episode, okay? One of the things that I think a lot of people struggle with when it comes to growing a podcast is they experience this thing called podfade. Podfade is basically this phenomenon where, it's really exciting. We start a launch, we put out like 5 or 10 episodes, and then we disappear. And honestly, really and truly, my secret to success has been consistency. It's been the fact that I have posted every Friday, more or less, since January 2018. I think I've skipped a couple of Fridays, but I mean like probably can count on one hand, 2 hands max. So keep that in mind. And the thing to help you, stand up against pod fade, stand up against it, is batching. I started my podcast with a bunch of episodes in the queue. I did not ever rely on this like week to week strategy. And I still don't really. I'm still generally pre-filming, pre-recording ahead of time. There are some things that sometimes are more topical, so I do kind of do in the moment or whatever. I'm a little bit more lax with my schedule now, but back in the beginning, I was regularly batching. So do that if you can before you announce it, before you launch it. Make sure that you have some consistency. Make sure that you have a structure. Make sure that you have enough topics to talk about to keep you on the air for, however many years that is. What is that? Why can I not math? 7 years, 6 years, something like that. Make sure that you can actually fill up that time. So yeah. Once I launched my podcast, I did also launch with a website. I think this is really important to have just a simple place that people can go to find you. So I believe it still exists, freelancefridaypodcast.com. Does it? Yes, it does. Okay, so here's what I did. For the first year of having my podcast, I actually built a website. It was freelancefridaypodcast.com, and it was just focused on my podcast. I kind of uploaded for every episode, like a different blog post. I had all the links to all the different listening platforms and all of that good stuff. Over time, I realized that wasn't going to be sustainable for me to manage Freelance Friday Podcast, plus jamesandpark.com, plus latashajames.com. So what I do now is I just redirect Freelance Friday Podcast goes over to a page on my personal website, latashajames.com/podcast. So whatever you want to do works, but I think having freelancefridaypodcast.com is good because when I'm talking to people out in the world, when I am putting it on business cards, if I wanted to make a t-shirt or whatever, that's a lot easier to refer to than like Latasha James. I guess latashajames.com/podcast isn't terrible, but Freelance Friday Podcast sounds better, right? Or like, Apple dot whatever, like all that convoluted URL. Make sure you have things centralized all in one place, especially if you do multiple things. Like if you are a service provider, maybe you're an accountant, let's just say, that's going to be very confusing for your audience of people who just want to learn how to do their own taxes and they have to sort through your website that's dealing with, client facing stuff and whatnot. So yeah, that is something that I definitely recommend doing. Now, another strategy that I used when I first started my podcast was guests. I really don't have guests on my show very often anymore. I just had an amazing guest when my students, Valeria, was on. That's pretty much what I do now is I have students on the show because I think it's helpful at promoting them and building their platforms, which is something that I'm happy to do. And, I think is part of my job as an educator, teacher to do, but also because it helps promote my programs that they went through. So I don't really work with a ton of guests otherwise, unless I really feel called to do it, but that's besides the point. In the early days, I did definitely use guests as a part of my strategy for growth because I was nobody yet, right? I had no platform. I mean, I did have a platform, I did have a YouTube channel, I did have an Instagram, but my audience was quite small at that point compared to what it is now. So I was kind of starting from the bottom, more or less. So leveraging other people's audiences, or sometimes people refer to that as OPA, that was a good way for them to promote me to their audience. Because here's the thing, people love to talk about themselves and people love validation. We all do. I do. I say yes to almost every single podcast interview that comes my way, as long as it's semi in alignment, as long as people, come correct and aren't being weird about it. And if it really fits into my schedule. Whether you are somebody who has 5 listeners or 5 million listeners, I generally always say yes because I'm human and I like to talk about myself and I like validation that shows, hey, we look at this person as an expert. And so keep that in mind. I was really, really nervous. I will never forget, like my first guest ever. I was so nervous to have her on my show. Her name is Vina V. She was a YouTube consultant. I think she's kind of pivoted a little bit to more like mom entrepreneurship and stuff. But anyway, I was just so nervous, one, asking her to be on the show, but 2, actually getting ready for the interview. But she was so gracious and so nice. And yeah, like, of course, like she was happy to do it because it's showing that she is a thought leader. And in turn, she promoted it to her audience. And you do that enough times and, you start to pick up traction. Now, something that I definitely recommend doing with that is giving your guests like media packs. So make it so easy for them to share your show. And I mean, write out a document with copy and paste, social media captions. Hey, I'm so excited to be featured on Freelance Friday Podcast with Latasha J. Whatever you want to say, make it so they can just copy and paste it. Create graphics for them. You can use Canva for this. Nowadays, there are so many like short form video editing platforms if you were recording on video. So give them a ton of assets, give them whatever they need. I've always offered my guests, hey, if you want the full recording and you want to like insert it into a vlog or insert a section of it into your podcast or whatever, like I will give them whatever they need because it is all for the good of the show and for growth. Whenever I am a guest on a show and somebody gives me something like that, I always share it. When they don't, I usually still always share it, but it usually takes me a while. I'm going to be honest, because it's just like another thing I have to think about. And it's hard to create social media content, With that, you can also guest on other shows. So in the early days, I was in a ton of different Facebook groups. There was like, just search for like podcast guests on Facebook. There was She Podcasts is one if you're a woman. WOC Podcasters was one. Women of Color Podcasters, like just any type of podcast groups that you can get into on Facebook or wherever. Just start networking in those things. And over time, you'll start making connections. And a lot of those groups, at least at that time, they would have days of the week, like every Friday, pitch yourself to be on a podcast or say who you're looking for to be a guest on your show. And so that was a great way because it's one thing if your favorite creator or, a creator you admire shares an interview they did on your show. But I think when you actually get onto their show, like that is even a bigger deal. One of my biggest periods of growth, at least for the YouTube channel, this is not necessarily podcast specific, but I did have a huge period of growth after a graphic design freelance YouTube channel, Flux. They actually hired me to create basically like UGC, like to create content for their channel. And I had a huge spike in YouTube subscribers after that because I was actually inserted onto their platform. The audiences were aligned. Yes, it was graphic design versus more marketing, general business, but we were all talked about freelancing. And so, think about how you can do that for your podcast as well. Speaking of Facebook groups, early on, I also had a Facebook group for my podcast. I don't have it anymore, but I do have a Instagram broadcast channel. Those obviously didn't exist back in 2018, but if you want, I think it's on my profile. If you go to my Instagram, you can join that. I'm actually not great about updating it, but in theory, I should be updating with every episode and like just keeping the engagement, kind of keeping a group chat type of thing going for every episode. But yeah, in the early days, I did a Facebook group. It was a free Facebook group. And I think one of the things that you can set questions, pre-qualifying or screener questions, whatever they call it. And one of the things that I did on that is I said, if you want updates on the podcast, drop your email here. And that is a huge, huge way that I was able to grow my email list early on because almost everybody put in their email address. It wasn't required to join the group, but almost everybody did. And yeah, I would just promote the group on the show. I would say, hey, like if you want to connect with me or if you want to talk about this episode or, whatever, join the Facebook group. They would get that prompt. They would enter their email. Now I have their email. Now we're all in a group. And it was a great way to continue to build the brand. And it helps make your show, it turns it into a community, not just like another podcast. It makes you real, it humanizes you, and it gives added value to people's lives because they don't just listen to an episode and then go on about their day. They can actually go meet other people who are impacted by that episode or ask you clarifying questions about that episode and so on and so forth. So definitely recommend having some type of a community if you want to add value and really like beef up the show. Another early focus that I had in the early days was on reviews. Now, I really don't know like how much these really matter. I don't know if anybody does. Some people say they help with search and SEO and stuff. I think it's more of just a social proof thing. Whenever somebody does invite me on their podcast, for example, I always go to Apple Podcasts and I search the show and I look at not necessarily just how many reviews. Of course, that does give me an indicator of like how big the show is since listen metrics are not public. It will give me a sense of like, okay, is this like super high priority? Does this person have a huge audience and I need to say yes, like when do you want me? I can do it tomorrow. Or is this a newer show where maybe I can kind of like, I'll still say yes, but again, I'll fit it into my schedule a little bit better with all due respect. But I also look at what the reviews say. What is audience like about the show? What other kinds of guests have they had on in the past? What is their interview style? All that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think it is important to focus on reviews. And what I would do early on is I would read the reviews, which I think is a little boring, to be honest. It's not so much of a thing anymore. It's like, I don't know how excited people get about just hearing their review read on air, but I did do that. But I would also do giveaways. So I would say, hey, leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. Back then, again, Spotify didn't exist, but now you can leave ratings or reviews or whatever on Spotify. So I do it on there nowadays too. Leave a review, screenshot it, and DM me or email me or whatever, and you'll be entered into a raffle basically to win something. And I would give away just small little things. I have a journal. It's called the Coaching Journal. I've given that away. I've given away just other books that inspired me. I remember one of my early ones, I sent out a copy of Steal Like an Artist, which is one of my favorite books for creativity and entrepreneurship. just like little cheap things, nothing too intense. But again, people love to feel special. They love to feel seen. And, the art of physical mail is kind of fizzling out. You know what I mean? Like it's been a while since many of us have gotten a handwritten note, a handwritten thank you from their favorite podcaster or creator. So that can be a great way to do that. I also did merch. I used just like print on demand services. Teespring, I think, was one of them. And I remember I created some cute crew necks and gave those out, every once in a while. So think about how you can get more reviews. I do think it helps, if for nothing else than social proof, to help you get bigger guests and to help you book bigger stages. But it might also factor into SEO and stuff. I don't know if anybody really knows. Okay. Now, I did that. I did that for like 6 months or so. Then one day I was like, Latasha, you have a YouTube channel. You have a podcast. How do we make these things work together? Boom, the video podcast was born. I felt so silly, when I really thought about it. I was like, why am I making these separate? Why am I not leveraging, number one, my YouTube audience, which again was not huge at that point, but leverage my YouTube audience and also just like get two things done at once and get a video out of it too? Because I was really struggling to keep up with the workload of audio podcasts and then like 2 or 3 videos a week. It was just too much. So I started recording my podcast on video about 6 months in. And that is another huge growth point of my podcast. Here's the thing. Even if I didn't have an existing audience, this would have been huge because it really expands your SEO or search engine optimization potential. YouTube is the second biggest search engine after Google. And so, getting that exposure to the Google world, to the YouTube world is huge. Podcast platforms are not super searchable. They're getting better. Like I do nowadays. I listen to podcasts before I fall asleep, usually, if I can't sleep. And so I'll just search in Spotify, like toxic relationships or, mental health or Conor Oberst, like whatever I want to hear about, and then click on the podcast tab. And it is a little better now, I feel like, but definitely in 2018, 2019, I think the search on podcast platforms was not great. So YouTube really, really helped with that possibility. But it also gives you additional material. Like I said, it's another placement for me. And yeah, I truly, listen, I believe most podcasts would benefit from having a video component. I do think there is still a place for audio only. And I think if recording video is too overwhelming and if it's going to prevent you from starting, don't worry about it. Like I didn't start doing video until I was 6 months into my journey. So don't feel like you have to do it immediately, but do keep it in the back of your mind as an option. And it's something that somebody like me, I'm opening a podcast studio, subtle plug. It'll be ready hopefully in a month, maybe 2. You can work with somebody to help you once you've kind of gotten your sea legs, if you will, on the audio side. Like maybe you start to build a semi-decent sized audience and you're like, all right, we want to take things to the next level. Then you come into my studio or you hire a consultant to help you learn how to do the video piece as kind of a step 2. But I do think most shows can benefit from video, from the SEO perspective, but also from the content perspective, because nowadays we have all these social channels we've got to think about as well. In 2018, I did post on social media, but I was doing a lot of quote graphics. Like I would just create in Canva a quote from the episode and post that. That totally flew back then. Nowadays, you've got to have something a little bit more dynamic, right? Reels, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, all the things. Content Creator Confessions is a new podcast. Like I said, I think I'm about 10 episodes in. I created it with one of my best friends, Ryan. I will link it down below. Please subscribe, you guys. We get into really good conversations over there. And if you like this show, I think you will love that one. But we've been using YouTube Shorts a lot. We really need to be posting all the clips everywhere else too. I need to like put that on my to-do list, load up my Metricool, and repost those. But as of now, we've just been using YouTube Shorts. And it's still early days, so I can't really say like, oh my gosh, the YouTube Shorts really just grew our channel so much. We only have like 100 subscribers over there. But I do think they help, and they act as teaser content for people. And nowadays on YouTube, you can link your long form episode to your YouTube short as well, which is nice. So yeah, obviously having video content to be able to populate those feeds with is a lot more dynamic and allows you to really reach a wider amount of people than just relying on like quote graphics, for example. I get asked a lot about SEO, and honestly, I just use TubeBuddy, which is my YouTube SEO tool. TubeBuddy.com/Latasha if you want to give it a try. I've been using TubeBuddy for years to optimize my video titles, and I think it works really well. I do kind of want to rethink this a little bit moving forward, just because I do believe that the audio listeners and the YouTube listeners, there is overlap, but there are some that are different, if that makes sense. And I think the things people click on audio, like there'll be a big discrepancy. I'll have a YouTube version of the podcast be like 50,000 views, and then the audio version gets like 900. And I'm like, what? And then the reverse, like it'll be like 3,000 on audio and then like 1,000 on YouTube. I think the audiences kind of want something a little bit different. Audio listeners tend to be a little calmer. I listen, like I said, before I'm going to bed. YouTube is a lot more, for lack of better words, flashy, clickbaity. So I am kind of rethinking, like maybe some episodes do need to be audio only. Maybe I need to have an audio only day where I do 2 episodes a week and I do more of like the heart to heart, quiet, calm. We're rethinking that. We as in me and maybe you, let me know if you have any thoughts about it in the comments. But long story short, I pretty much just use my YouTube SEO and let that guide my strategy for audio as well. And then I talked about collecting emails with the Facebook group. Another way that I collected emails when I was first growing is I would just create lead magnets. Hey, I'm talking about podcasts today. Here's the podcasting checklist. I'm talking about getting clients. Here's the getting clients free course or whatever. And I would just create opt-ins, get their email addresses that way. You can use Flodesk is what I use for my marketing specific emails. I'll leave a link for that down below. If you wanted to create more of like an editorial style thing, you could use something like Substack, which I am just getting back into now. wordsareHard.substack.com. And what's cool about that is, if you wanted to, you could use Substack as a community too, because you can have community chat features on Substack. You can also use it as a revenue generator because you can turn on paid subscriptions. So, figure that out for yourself. But either way, send out emails. Send out emails with every single episode, at least in the beginning. It is going to send an influx of people over to your episode at once, which is going to tell the algorithms this is something people care about, at least on YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that are very algorithm based. The audio platforms, like I said, I think work a little bit differently, but I don't think it hurts to have a bunch of people listening, right? So what else do I do? Another thing that I do is I try to do an annual listener survey. So I just use, you can use Google Forms, you can use Typeform, you could use Honeybook if you use Honeybook like I do, whatever. Just create a form and ask a bunch of questions to your audience. Again, you can incentivize this. I usually do. I usually say, hey, I'm going to pull 3 winners to win like something small, a coffee gift card or again, a book or coaching journal, something like that. But yeah, ask about what were the standout episodes of the show? Which formats do you prefer? I always ask, do you prefer guest? Do you prefer solo? Do you prefer short, long, blah, 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 blah. And it really gives such valuable feedback because at the end of the day, that's how you grow the show is you have a good show. I mean, I know that's like the advice nobody wants to hear. But I learned from my listener surveys, for example, that people really like the solo episodes. That's no shade to guests that I've had on. I've had amazing guests on. I don't know, maybe I'm a bad interviewer. I don't know, but I think people just like listening to my stories, which is weird to me because I'm like, I don't have much interesting to say, but I get the feedback a lot that people like my voice, which is so weird to me and very humbling because I grew up with a speech impediment and like never thought I'd be talking for a living. But that just helped me realize, hey, Latasha, people listen because of your like calm voice and demeanor. You don't need to be like, in the beginning of my show, I had this like loud, like, Jersey Shore style like music and stuff. And I don't think that's my person. Like my audience doesn't like that by and large. They just whatever. So you learn a lot about just delivery, production, formatting, all of that from doing a listener survey. And then, yeah, for tools, I really don't use a ton of tools. Obviously, I use Metricool for my social media scheduling. What's cool about this tool is that you can upload the clip or the link to your episode, and then you can just like click on the other social media platforms that you have connected and schedule to all at once. So you can schedule to your Instagram, your TikTok, your YouTube shorts, your Facebook group, whatever, LinkedIn, more or less all at the same time, which just saves so much time and energy. They also have additional tools in there, like analytics are big, looking at which social platforms are actually performing well for you. If you're seeing, wow, like Instagram is growing a lot and we're posting all of our podcast clips, well, maybe you double down on Instagram, maybe you spend more time in stories as well, or go live on there, and whatever. It can give you valuable insights like that. But besides Metricool and TubeBuddy, which I already talked about for SEO, I really like this tool called Cast Magic. You upload your podcast, either the audio or the video or the link, and it transcribes it for you. And it also gives you just like a bunch of written content. I am a writer. I think I'm feel confident enough to say that nowadays. I always hid from that, but that's how I got started freelancing. I've got a column in Freelancer magazine. I think I can say I'm a decently good writer. But if you are not a writer, if you're not confident in writing, it can give you some good material, like some good outlines, and just kind of give you some thought starters that you can then wordsmith, tweak, make it sound more like yourself, and use in your email content, your blog content, your social media captions, and so on. So I do like that tool. I think it's pretty good. I use it when I just need like a thought starter. Riverside is a tool that so Ryan and I, for Content Creator Confessions, even though we're only like 30 minutes away from each other, when I get the studio, I'm going to try to convince him to record in person with me because I think it just does make things better. But right now, and especially when I was spending a lot of time in Florida over like the dark days of winter, we were recording virtually using Riverside. So that's nice, obviously, if you have guests or if you have a co-host or something like that. And then they also have some short form clips features. They have this thing called Magic Clips. So you can click on it and it'll automatically pull sound bites for you, which just saves a lot of time. Content Creator Confessions is my second podcast, in addition to 2 videos a week, in addition to running a whole business. So like, obviously I'm not able to give it the love and care that I necessarily want to. So having something like that is really nice to just kind of like have, some robot out in space do it for me, I guess. Descript is another tool that I've used for years. So this is a very similar tool in that you can repurpose your long form content into short form clips. You can add captions to your short form clips. You can do video editing in there. So if you're not a video editor, like I've been editing videos since I was 16, 15, something like that. If you have not, Descript is an amazing tool. Really easy to edit using that one. And then you can also get all your clips and all that good stuff from there. So those are kind of the tools that I use. Those are the big growth strategies I think that I used to grow this podcast and that I'm trying to kind of replicate for Content Creator Confessions. Please let me know if you have any questions, if you want me to go deeper on any of this stuff. I would love to hear from you. And yeah, I really hope this is helpful. If you're looking to start a podcast, get in touch with me, especially if you are in Michigan, Southeast Michigan, Ann Arbor area. My studio is going to be opening soon, and I'm so excited to help bring some shows to life. So holler at me. I'm on Instagram at the Latasha James. Follow my Substack, leave a comment, send a carrier pigeon. I don't know. And thanks again to Metricool for sponsoring today's episode. Be sure to go check out that study. It is so mind-blowing. I learned so much from it. And I hope you all are having an amazing day. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.